Welcome to everyone on May the 9th. It is Lunch and Learn with Tony Woodard. And today, as Tony just said, we have Lindsay Moore, who has more hats than anybody I ever saw. And I don't know how in the world he gets around to it all. But I will say this up front, that we are so fortunate to be at the Department of Labor and Licensing, and all that Lindsay has done for us as a program and all that Tony's been able to implement at his direction. We as an industry are so much better off for it, and consumers, which is what we're all concerned about, are better off for having the changes that we have been making over the last 3 or so years. I've had some questions this month about the 50% rule on duct repair. At what point is a person required to bring the entire duct system up to code?
You've got it nailed right there, 50%. If you actually have a remodel where you're, and it's obvious if you had a 50% change out, meaning you doubling the size of your equipment, you of course have to make the equipment or the duct system large enough for the return and supply to handle it. But the 50% rule is the trick. Once you hit that, now you're talking about, if you're going to quote this and bid this, you need to know that's going to be probably brand new insulation, because it's going to have to get sealed up to the mastic requirement. And we all know if it's a 20-year-old house, it's not mastic. So if you're bidding one of these, yes, you need to pretty much figure a new duct system.
Now getting into the important stuff for today, license renewal, or lots of folks are getting a license renewal, and frankly, they're somewhat confused about it. And what we have on the page here is a copy of a statement that you would be getting from the Department of Labor and Licensed HVACR program. And I took mine and tried to black out all the parts there that had my personal information in it, just so that you would be able to see that this is a license renewal. And one of the things I want to point out right here, and Tony, we will get into this, is the only thing that's really showing that I left on this is my renewal date is 5/31. Down here, it says that we can cut this off and we can mail it in with our check, and everything's lovely, no big deal. It doesn't reference the fact that we can renew online, but we can. But let me tell you the problem I ran into, and I need you to help us out. I got this toward the end of April, and I thought, okay, I'll get this taken care of. I went online to renew, and it basically didn't seem to think I had a license at all. What was happening?
Okay, what's happening is it won't recognize your license till the very first day of that expiration month. So if you're in a June license holder, 6/1 of 2022 will be the first day that you can go online. And when you key, which you're going to get further in your slide, it'll probably show, when you key in your license number, it will acknowledge and recognize it. It will also recognize it if you're a month late or up to 2 months late. It will automatically charge you a $10 late fee, but you have that 90-day window there from the first day of the month that it does expire to 2 months after. But it will not recognize you until your month. That's correct.
You know, this is going to sound like a complaint, and I guess it is. I think most of us, when we experience something like this, we're going to think this is the squirreliest thing in the whole world. But I also understand that, when people are fixing up computer programs, what they know they need to do based on their software doesn't always make sense to us out in the field. So what we've got to do is just find out, okay, what's the rule? I can live by any rule. Just let me know what the rule is. So that is very helpful. Let me repeat it to make sure that everybody understands that when you get your license renewal, if you want to go online, you can, but you must wait until the month in which your license is due. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
I noticed again here that it says that there's no reference to online renewal. I wish there was. I wish there was a way that could be something on there that said, hey, you can send this in, or you can go to online and be able to renew it. But again, I understand it's one of those things that, computer programmers can only do what they can do with the software that they have.
Tom, let's do some online internet problem resolving right now. How about if I commit to you, we'll get that added in for the next month issue.
Tony, kiss him on that bald head, would you?
We'll get that, and I'll see if the space allows, we'll even add in to remind them that they cannot renew the first day of the month it comes due in.
Let me just point out something here. That is the difference in what we're experiencing now. Now then, if we have a problem that can be fixed, Lindsay makes sure it gets fixed. And I appreciate that so much. That's a world of difference, Lindsay. We appreciate you. We'll go on to the next slide. Here is, to me, now this is not the only way, and Tony's probably going to give you a better way, but for me, just as a contractor in the field who's getting a statement, the best way to be able to find how to go online, because I can't remember all of this, how to do it. Maybe, Lindsay, you could add that particular link to that letter as well. But for me, I Googled in Arkansas HVACR license renewal. That's pretty generic, and boom, there it came. Tony, jump in and tell us what we're looking at.
Okay, that is the page that one popped up, propagated. That is the page that'll show you where you're going to key your number in, and then it'll drop down a little drop box, and you have to give them the license type, the A, the B, the C, the D, the E, whatever you are. So that is once you get to that page. Now, our regular home page, it's got the guys with the hard hats on and everything, and you can click on the word labor, put your pointer on labor, a drop down box will come out, and then under that you look for code enforcement. We're under code enforcement. Then another box will come out, and we're at the very bottom, HVACR. Double click that and it'll bring you to this. But also on this page right here, when you go to our home page, if you would just run that page up and just scroll it on up, down on the left side, you'll see these little, like, little thought boxes that used to come out of people's head, like in the cartoon. Yeah. There's little boxes down there, and it'll tell you HVACR license renewal. And you can click that, and it'll take you straight to this page. That's a simpler way to do it.
You expect me to remember all that?
Okay, we're going to go back over. When you get to the home page, labor.arkansas.gov, or Google, like you said, just Google how do I find it? It'll bring you to labor.arkansas.gov. You just scroll that page up. As it's scrolling up, you keep going up, and down near the bottom, there are little white, round, oval-looking boxes. One will have electrical, one has boiler, HVAC. You look for the HVAC box, and inside of that box, it says individual license renewal. You can click on that, and it will bring you to this page.
I turned 45 a couple of days ago, maybe more than a few. And so I have to do it the easiest way I can. So I'll follow your example if I can. If I cannot, I'm going to revert back to Arkansas HVACR license renewal. And as long as that works, that's a good way for somebody simple like me to do it. Now, we've got another issue, and this is a huge issue because it takes up so much time of the board. I don't know, Lindsay, Tony, one of you jump into this.
Okay, Act 990 of 2019 was a law initiated that look at not necessarily the backgrounds, but for a registrant, we'll say, going to work for a contractor, there's a question that asks them if they've ever been convicted of a felony. If they say yes, then they have to list what that felony was. If they say no, well, you just move on. But what it does trigger is it triggers when you check yes, that we now have to bring this before the board if the registrant and the employer wants to have a hearing to see if they're licensed, if they should be licensed by the HVAC board. It's strictly a voluntary question. I don't know of any penalties that exist if you click yes or no or whatever your status is. But what I do know is once you click yes, that we have to look at it. There's a set of defined statutes, mostly Class A felonies, B felonies, everything from murder to drug possession. And this has been tripping up a number of the contractors that sometimes they hire ex-felons. These folks are trying to turn their lives around. They're trying to get a new start in the industry. But what happens when they check yes and put that information in, we're mandated to go ahead and do a background check, ask them if they want a hearing on this matter. You have to get letters of reference from your employer. It could be your minister, pastor. It could be a parole officer. And then the board considers this and then approves you for licensure. The bad side of it is for contractors, well, for all involved. This is our busy time of the year. You need people to work yesterday. You don't need to wait 30 to 60 days for an administrative hearing like this. And so once that box is clicked yes, it's an optional box, But once that's clicked yes, we have to do that. The important thing to remember, if you want to hire that employee and they're being truthful and honest with everything, that if you're going to send in 10 registrants, 9 of them have clicked no and the one yes, you need to send that one with a separate payment. That way we can work through the administrative portion of that while the others are being processed and put to work. We're looking at resolutions to try to find a way to streamline this. We're going to try the first portion of that in this month's HVACR board meeting on Wednesday. Then we're going to have a board discussion about how to expedite these so we can be responsive to the industry.
Lindsay, I've been watching this over the last 2 or 3 legislative sessions, and I'd like to explain to everybody the intent as I understand it. The intent was to make sure that people have a second chance. You know, there were some very hard, fast rules that depending upon the crime, you could not go to work in several career opportunities. And so the legislature was trying to say, okay, there are some areas that maybe you should not be able to regardless, but there's some areas that it ought to be sort of optional. And so they moved toward that with this Act 990. And there were some issues here that you could not put a waiver on, but there were some that you could put a waiver on. And that created the problem for you guys. So my next thing is, we got an employee out here, a person that we want to be an employee, but we want to be totally honest, and we check that, yes, they have been convicted of a felony. How long is it going to take for the process to go through before I can actually put them to work?
Well, right now, that's, I'm going to say a minimum of 60 days because we have to schedule these hearings with the board. Well, if we receive it on the 20th, I have to have what's called due process under the Administrative Procedures Act. And we have to give the employee an opportunity to request the hearing, or the employer, and then we have to get it set up with the board. We have to run through our legal counsel, and it's time consuming. We're looking at other options, but understand the first part to processing this law is understanding what it says, knowing that group of offenses that the legislature says you need to review these to see if this person can be given a second opportunity or whatever the board really feels. Now, again, since we're in problem solving mode today, I'm going to have a copy of this put up on the website for everyone to look at it. So when they're filling out the applications. The other thing you got to look at is sometimes these guys have been out of probation 4 or 5 years, but we're finding now that the folks are checking yes, but the statute doesn't apply to their particular crime. So we're able to start expediting those. We took care of about half of the ones we had in queue last week. We've got, I think, 10 scheduled to go before the board this week. We've also found a way where we can kind of pre-vet these to get to the board so they can do a quick group approval. It's going to go into the review of the board chairman, Alan Dean, tomorrow, or Wednesday, excuse me, and then we're going to make a what we call staff recommendation to approve or disapprove. Instead of disapproving, what we will do is we'll just say we think the board needs to hear these folks for their opportunity to be licensed with our department.
Well, one of the things that we need to point out again, and that is that this was an act of the legislature designed to expand opportunities for people who had committed felonies but were not quite as serious and egregious as some, so that there could be a waiver for them to be able to go to work. And that, we're all, I think, forgiving people and want to be able to help people, especially if we know them. And here's some notes, important notes for a contractor. Oh, one of the things I want to say here is that a 60-day time frame seems like a huge amount of time. On the other hand, without this law and without that 60 days, there would be no waiver. And so while it's frustrating, it is a waiver that's designed to help, not to hurt. Okay, important notes for the contractor. Who's going to jump in on that?
Okay, the do not include the waiver, especially the part about the check. So if you've got 4 brand new employees, one of these happens to be a young man that made a mistake, that has a felony, independently mail that check with that application. That way, the 3 that you put on the one check, the law still works. The day you fire that check off, you make that application, you put it in their wallet, they can go to work. what's happened is we'll have 4 get sent in. One of them will be with this Act 990, and then the system gets clogged up and we have to kick them all out. So then you're sitting with no employees able to go to work. That's the critical part about separating these out. The Act 990 needs to be its own, sent by itself with its own check. The check, you could really wait until we have the hearing. If it's one of the cases that it has to go before the board to hear, you might really would be better off to wait till the board says, okay, yes, this individual can get a license, then we can apply.
Okay, to allow sufficient time for vetting, that's the 60 days or so that you were talking about, right?
Yes, sir.
And be prepared to testify that before the board as to why you feel the waiver applicant is rehabilitated and not a danger to the community. Is that right?
And that can be simply done by a letter on your letterhead, showing giving him a reference, if you will, of support that you want this young man or woman to have a second opportunity and speak to their character. We've had these letter supports from the companies themselves, as well as people of the clergy. We've had a county judge, a quorum court member, a parole board member. So, these are things that the Act clearly states that you can have in letters of support to get your application through.
Okay, in the little Q&A, I clicked on one. One of them was asking, can they go ahead and put the individual to work? No, they cannot. That's why it's critical to separate the Act 990 application from the others. The regular registrant can immediately go to work once you file the charge. The Act 990 will have to be approved by our department or the board. So that's the answer to that question. And then another one was, will the contractor be notified? Yes, once you mail in your Act 990 and your waiver, there will be a Zoom link sent to you, emailed to you for that board meeting, whatever board hearing, whatever month it falls under. So those were the 2 questions that were popping up.
And they will all be Zoom meetings, Zoom hearings. That will help expedite it. What you're probably going to see is that we're going to limit the time that people provide. That's why we're saying that they can testify to. If you can just get us the documents signed and notarized, whatever, that will help the contractors. It kind of ties into this, but it doesn't. We've just recently hired a new enforcement coordinator that's going to be managing these and other things for the boards. And one of her jobs will be to kind of get this vetting in order and keep things moving at a fast pace. We want to get these guys to work. They need a second opportunity, and stop and think about it. The Arkansas Department of Correction actually has a training program for HVAC. So, when these guys come out and they've got a skill that they can take with them and bring to the employer to give them an opportunity to get out on top of their work, we want to make sure we can get them there as quickly as possible.
Okay, the last 2 issues today, that duct testing for all residential new construction begins January 1, 2023. Is that still right, Tony?
Yes, sir. That is tracking right on.
I might mention that the association will be doing a series probably of another 10 classes around the state for people who want to do their own duct testing. So stay tuned and we'll be sure to let everybody know when those classes are going to be. The next item that we need to look at before we go is continuing education. Where are we on that?
Okay, we're going to kick off the CEU programs in July. We're going to be, in fact, starting in May, or starting in June, we're going to start mailing out, letting the contractors know the CEU requirements for their licensures renewal. It's 4 hours right now. We're going to take applications from the providers that want to provide the classes and process them. We'll have an approved list of providers. And we're still working out some of the details because, as you know, we're in this process of transitioning completely to an electronic renewal process. We've been in the process for 1.5 years. It looks like we're going to spend another 8 or 9 months on that. But we're going to get it set up where we can start having these classes where they can start attaching or sending this in with their renewal notices, their certificates. But it will have to be by approved providers from the HVACR board.
Now, I've got here on this slide, January the 1st. Is that when you see the actual checking for the classes to take effect so that they can renew?
we're projecting to have these things kick off over the summer.
Okay. Well, I mean, I know the classes are going to be offered, but at what point will a person be required to have completed 4 hours of education?
January 1. Yeah, January 1, Tom.
Okay. All right. Good deal. I want to mention to everybody that beginning in the fall, because we know nobody wants to go to a class in the summertime, but beginning in the fall, the association will sponsor a minimum of 8, maybe 10 large training classes across the state. Depending upon how large those classes are, we'll have breakout sessions so that, 25 or 30 people will be able to get the technical education side of the continuing education requirement. And then in the last 2 hours, we will ask one of the inspectors to teach that 2 hours of code so that in one afternoon, you'll be able to get all 4 hours of your continuing education and be done with it for a year. We anticipate doing this beginning late October, early November. If the demand is there, we can do a couple of them, but then we will certainly come back again in February-ish to have another round of classes, so that we'll have that 8 to 10 classes for a total of somewhere between 16 and 20 classes a year. All right, if you've got any questions or compliments or criticisms about the program today, you can call 501-682-9201, 501-682-9201.
Hey, let me add one thing. You can call in, but you can always email us questions or ask us to contact you. You can use the email address asklabor@arkansas.gov. That's ASKLABOR@arkansas.gov. And we can get those questions back here, or we can get someone to call you back.
These lunch and learns are the best way in the world for us to be able to communicate back and forth between the industry and the Department of Labor and Licensing HVACR program. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Lindsay. Have a great day.